Most people believe success has a deadline, that if you haven't made it by a certain age, you never will. But psychology tells a very different story. Some lives don't rise early. They ripen slowly. Carl Jung observed that many of the most psychologically complete individuals do not peak in youth. Their early years are spent absorbing, struggling, and silently forming an inner structure strong enough to carry meaning later in life. While others chase recognition, late bloomers are unconsciously preparing. They often feel behind, out of sync, misunderstood. Yet this delay is not failure, it is incubation. Late bloomers develop depth before direction. They suffer longer, but they see clearer. When they finally move forward, they do not chase approval, they move with inevitability. Their success doesn't look loud. It looks earned. This is not a story about motivation. It's about timing, individuation, and why some people must walk through confusion before they can walk with certainty. If you feel like life has tested you longer than others, this video will explain why. Most late bloomers spend the first half of their lives believing something is wrong with them. They watch others move smoothly through milestones, confidence, clarity, success, while they feel stalled, delayed, or invisible. Society quietly teaches them that timing is proof of worth. Early achievement becomes evidence of talent. Speed becomes evidence of intelligence. And anyone who lags behind internalizes a subtle shame. But psychology reveals something far more unsettling and far more hopeful. Not all development is meant to be visible early. Some personalities are structured inward before they are expressed outward. Their growth happens below the surface, in ways that cannot be measured by resumes, income, or recognition. What looks like delay is often depth forming without applause. This kind of person is not built for rapid ascent. They are built for endurance. In early life, the psyche is tasked with adaptation, learning how to survive, belong, and function in the external world. For many, this process flows easily. For late bloomers, it doesn't. They struggle not because they are incapable, but because their inner world is more complex than the roles offered to them. They feel misaligned long before they understand why. They may try to force themselves into paths that don't fit, careers that drain them, identities that feel hollow, relationships that feel performative. Each attempt fails quietly, reinforcing the belief that they are behind. But beneath that frustration, something essential is happening. The false self is being rejected. This is painful, and it takes time. Late bloomers are often more introspective, more sensitive to meaning, more resistant to shallow rewards. Their psyche refuses shortcuts. While others learn how to win approval, they are unconsciously learning how to tell truth from illusion. That difference costs them years. They may appear indecisive, slow, or lost, but internally they are gathering material. Emotional experiences, disappointments, contradictions, unanswered questions. This accumulation forms a dense psychological foundation. Without it, what comes later would collapse. Many late bloomers experience early adulthood as a kind of prolonged fog. They know what they don't want long before they know what they do. And that absence of clarity feels like failure in a world obsessed with direction. But clarity that comes too early is often borrowed. Late bloomers are not borrowing. They are forging. Their struggles are not random. They are formative. Every delay forces deeper reflection. Every misfit role sharpens self-awareness. Every collapse removes another borrowed identity. Over time, something rare begins to form: inner authority. This is why late bloomers often seem older than their age emotionally, and younger than their age professionally. Their inner world matures long before their outer life reflects it. And this imbalance is not an accident. Psychologically, they are preparing for a different phase of life, one that does not revolve around proving worth, but embodying it. While early achievers build identity through success, late bloomers build success through identity. The cost is time. The reward is alignment. At this stage, most late bloomers still don't feel special. They feel exhausted. They feel behind. They may even feel resentful watching others reap rewards that seem effortless. But what they don't see yet is that many early successes are adaptations to expectation, not expressions of self. Those paths often crack later. Late bloomers crack early, so they don't shatter later. Their psyche refuses to let them settle prematurely. It keeps disrupting comfort until something authentic emerges. And authenticity cannot be rushed. It requires failure, solitude, and long stretches of uncertainty. This is why late bloomers often spend years alone, psychologically or literally. They pull back from crowds, trends, and noise, not because they dislike people, but because surface-level engagement feels draining. Their nervous system demands depth. This solitude is not emptiness. It is gestation. They are not wasting time. They are incubating a self that cannot survive superficial success. And when that self finally begins to surface, it does not ask for permission. It moves with quiet inevitability. As time passes, the late bloomer begins to notice a strange contradiction. Externally, life seems stalled. Internally, everything is moving, while others are busy building visible structures. Titles, routines, reputations. The late bloomer is undergoing something far less obvious but far more demanding. Inner confrontation. Questions that most people avoid are faced early and repeatedly. Who am I without approval? What actually matters to me? What kind of life would feel true, even if no one applauded it? These questions do not produce quick answers. They produce tension. Late bloomers often live for years inside this tension. They feel divided between who they are expected to be and who they sense they could become. This inner split creates restlessness, dissatisfaction, and a chronic feeling of almost ready, almost clear, almost there. From the outside, it looks like indecision. From the inside, it feels like survival. Because choosing the wrong life too early would be worse than choosing none at all. This is why late bloomers often walk away from paths that seem perfectly fine to others. Jobs that pay well but feel empty. Relationships that offer stability but not truth. Lifestyles that promise comfort at the cost of inner suffocation. Each time they walk away, they lose time, but they preserve something more important: psychological coherence. And that preservation comes at a price. Late bloomers often carry a deep sense of guilt. Guilt for not keeping up. Guilt for disappointing family. Guilt for starting over when they're supposed to be settling down. Over time, this guilt can harden into self-doubt. They begin to wonder if their standards are unrealistic, if their longing for meaning is childish, if they should just accept what is available. But the psyche does not let them. Every time they try to betray themselves for the sake of stability, something breaks. Motivation collapses, energy drains, anxiety rises, or a quiet depression sets in. This is not weakness. It is the psyche enforcing honesty. Late bloomers are often misunderstood here. People assume they are afraid of commitment. In reality, they are afraid of committing to a life that will slowly erase them. This long period of trial and rejection builds something rare: discernment. Late bloomers become exceptionally good at sensing what is false. They develop an almost physical reaction to inauthenticity. Forced ambition, hollow success, borrowed values. What once confused them now repels them. Slowly, their inner compass sharpens. They begin to recognize patterns in their failures, not as evidence of incompetence, but as signals. Each wrong turn teaches them what does not belong to them. Each collapse removes another illusion. Over time, their life becomes less crowded with options, but more precise in direction. This is the stage where many late bloomers feel loneliest. They no longer fit into the old world, but the new one has not yet appeared. Friends move on. Conversations feel shallow. Social milestones stop resonating. There is a sense of standing between lives, no longer who they were, not yet who they will become. This liminal state is deeply uncomfortable, but it is also fertile. In this space, the late bloomer begins to rely less on external validation and more on inner signals. They start trusting their own perception, even when it contradicts popular opinion. This is the quiet birth of inner authority. They may not have status yet. They may not have certainty yet, but they are no longer lost in other people's expectations. And that shift changes everything. Because once a person stops asking, "What should I do to be accepted?" and starts asking, "What must I do to remain whole?" their life trajectory alters permanently. The pace may still be slow, but the direction becomes irreversible. This is why, when late bloomers finally move forward, they do not drift. They commit, not out of pressure, not out of fear, but out of alignment. What follows may look sudden to the outside world, but it is anything but sudden. It is the visible outcome of years spent building an invisible foundation. And that foundation does not crumble easily. There comes a moment in the life of a late bloomer when waiting becomes impossible. Not because the fear is gone. Not because everything is finally clear, but because remaining still would now mean betraying what has been built inside. This is the turning point most people never see. From the outside, it can look sudden. An unexpected career shift, a bold decision, a quiet withdrawal followed by decisive action. People say it happened overnight. But the late bloomer knows the truth. Nothing about this moment is sudden. It is the result of years spent refining an inner structure strong enough to support movement. By this stage, something fundamental has changed. The late bloomer is no longer trying to become someone. They are trying to express someone. The endless questioning that once caused paralysis now becomes precision. They no longer ask, "What should I do?" They ask, "What is mine to do?" This distinction matters. Earlier in life, options felt overwhelming because none of them felt true. Now, most options feel irrelevant. The field narrows. Not because opportunities disappear, but because discernment sharpens. The late bloomer begins to move with an unusual calm. They are not chasing trends or approval. They are responding to an internal necessity. This is why late blooming success often looks different. It is quieter, more focused, less performative. Late bloomers are rarely interested in proving themselves. They've spent too long being misunderstood to need validation now. Their motivation comes from coherence, the relief of finally living in a way that matches their inner life. And that coherence produces power. People begin to notice something unsettling about them. They are not rushed. They do not posture. They are comfortable saying no. They work with intensity but without desperation. This combination, depth without urgency, is rare, and it commands respect without demanding it. Importantly, late bloomers are not immune to doubt at this stage. Fear still appears. Uncertainty still whispers. The difference is that doubt no longer governs their decisions. They have lived with uncertainty long enough to know it is not fatal. They trust themselves more than they trust outcomes, because they have already survived years without external confirmation. This is why late bloomers often endure setbacks better once they finally step forward. Failure does not collapse their identity, it refines it. They are no longer experimenting with who they are. They are testing how best to express it. Over time, momentum builds. Not the frantic momentum of early achievers trying to stay ahead, but the grounded momentum of someone moving in rhythm with themselves. Their work compounds. Their presence stabilizes. Others begin to seek them out, not for hype but for clarity. Late bloomers often become quiet authorities in their fields. They speak less but with weight. They act less but with precision. They no longer scatter their energy trying to belong everywhere. They belong where they stand. This is also why late bloomers tend to age differently psychologically. While many people experience a crisis when external achievements lose their shine, late bloomers experience relief. They are finally living from the inside out. Time no longer feels like an enemy, feels like an ally. Their earlier delays now make sense. The years of confusion were not wasted, they were preparatory. The isolation was not accidental, it was protective. The failures were not proof of inadequacy, they were filters, removing everything that did not belong. By the time recognition arrives, if it arrives at all, the late bloomer is no longer dependent on it. Success becomes an extension of alignment, not its source. And that is the quiet paradox of the late bloomer psychology. They arrive later, but when they arrive whole. They are not trying to catch up to life. Life finally catches up to them. One of the least discussed truths about late bloomers is this: by the time life finally opens its doors to them, they are no longer impressed by the room. They have already lived without guarantees. They have already faced obscurity, uncertainty, and self-doubt. So when opportunity appears, it does not intoxicate them, clarifies them. This is where the late bloomer separates completely from the early achiever. Early success often creates dependence on praise, momentum, or identity built around performance. Late bloomers, in contrast, enter success after detachment. They know who they are without applause, which means applause no longer controls them. Psychologically, this is a position of strength. Late bloomers do not over-identify with their roles. Title does not define them. A setback does not erase them. Their sense of self was forged in periods where nothing external confirmed their worth. As a result, they carry an unusual stability. They are difficult to manipulate, rush, or intimidate. This stability often reads as confidence, but it is something deeper: self-possession. Because they spent so long without external structure, late bloomers learned how to regulate themselves. They became emotionally literate out of necessity. They had to sit with discomfort, ambiguity, and loneliness without collapsing into distraction. Over time, this builds a nervous system that can tolerate pressure without panic. That is why late bloomers often thrive in environments where others burn out. They do not need constant stimulation. They do not chase validation cycles. They are not terrified of slowing down. Their relationship with time has changed. Where others feel urgency, late bloomers feel patience. They understand that meaningful growth is cyclical, not linear. Progress accelerates, pauses, and deepens. Because their own life unfolded slowly, they trust slow processes. This makes them exceptional long-term thinkers. It also makes them dangerous competitors. Not in an aggressive sense, but in a strategic one. Late bloomers do not exhaust themselves early. They conserve energy. They choose carefully. And when they commit, they stay committed. While others sprint and burn, they endure. Another quiet transformation occurs here. Resentment dissolves. Earlier in life, watching others succeed easily could trigger bitterness. But once the late bloomer steps into alignment, comparison loses its grip. They no longer measure their life against timelines that were never meant for them. They recognize that everyone is shaped by different psychological demands. This produces compassion but also boundaries. Late bloomers stop explaining themselves. They stop justifying their pace. They stop seeking permission for their choices. This can feel unsettling to those who knew them when they were uncertain. The same person who once seemed lost now moves with quiet certainty. And certainty, when it is not loud, unsettles people. Late bloomers often become selective with relationships at this stage. Not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. They know how easily the wrong environment can drain them, so they protect their inner world. They choose depth over frequency, truth over harmony. This is why their social circles may shrink, but grow stronger. By now, the late bloomer understands something fundamental. Their life is not about proving potential. It is about fulfilling it. The long delay has stripped away urgency, ego, and performance. What remains is a grounded commitment to what feels necessary and meaningful. They are no longer chasing a future self. They are living as one. And from this position, their influence deepens. Not everyone will notice it immediately, but those who do feel it intuitively. They sense that this person has been tested by time and did not break. The late bloomer does not rush the next stage. They know they are finally moving in rhythm with themselves. And when someone moves in rhythm, life tends to cooperate. At a certain point, the late bloomer stops asking life for reassurance. Not because uncertainty disappears, but because reassurance is no longer required. By now, they have lived long enough without external confirmation to know that meaning does not arrive as a reward. It emerges as a consequence of alignment. Their earlier years taught them something most people never learn. A life that looks successful but feels false is still a failure. This realization changes how they move through the world. They no longer rush to capitalize on every opportunity. They let many pass. They understand that not everything available is meant for them. Their sense of timing is internal now. They act when something resonates deeply, not when pressure demands speed. This makes their choices look almost countercultural. While others chase visibility, late bloomers prioritize depth. While others fear being left behind, late bloomers trust their pace. While others seek certainty, late bloomers seek coherence. And coherence produces a quiet fulfillment that does not depend on circumstances. By this stage, the struggles of the past no longer feel like wounds. They feel like initiation. The loneliness, the confusion, the long stretches of not knowing, each one shaped perception, humility, and strength. Nothing is rejected. Nothing is wasted. Even regret is integrated. Late bloomers tend to look back on their earlier life not with bitterness, but with understanding. They see why certain doors had to remain closed, why certain successes would have arrived too early, why they needed to be delayed until they could carry responsibility without losing themselves. This is the psychological reward of blooming late. They do not live with the anxiety of maintaining an image. They do not fear starting again if something loses meaning. They are not afraid of silence, slowness, or change. They have already survived all three. Their life may never look conventional, but it will feel authentic. And authenticity, once embodied, becomes a stabilizing force. Others sense it. They trust it. They are drawn to it. Late bloomers often become anchors for others, not by giving advice but by example, by showing that it is possible to arrive later and arrive whole. That meaning does not expire. That depth has its own timing. And perhaps this is the most important truth of all. Late bloomers do not miss their moment. Their moment waits for them. If you felt behind, misunderstood, or delayed in life, understand this. Your path is not broken. It is simply unfolding on a deeper timeline. And when it reveals itself, it will make sense in a way that shortcuts never could. If this perspective resonated with you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us. More insights like this are coming, for those who know that real growth takes time.